Companies are getting slammed for it. We talk with the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities about why. Also, the biggie shakeup is still shaking. We're going to hear from the experts about where UConn might end up, why, and which conference they should be in. And then a first in Hartford. The city's first female pump operator is here to talk about making history. This is The Real Story. Hi, I'm Lori Perez. Lawmakers have convened hearings in Hartford into the performance of Connecticut power companies following Tropical Storm Irene. Fox Connecticut's George Colley shows us the dust-up so far.
In CLMP's 100-year history, no storm has caused as much damage or as many outages as Tropical Storm Irene.
Jeffrey Butler, President and Chief Operating Officer of Connecticut Light and Power, led off a full day of hearings at the Legislative Office Building. Hearings meant to review the preparation and response Connecticut's power companies had following Tropical Storm Irene.
I believe that CLMP's preparedness for the response to the storm was appropriate, effective, and strong.
At the peak of the outages, 700,000 people were left in the dark, some for over a week. Power company officials say that 90% of those outages were caused by downed trees. With Irene pounding almost the entire eastern shoreline, it took longer than usual for backup crews to come in from out of state. Despite that, company executives applauded their employees for the work they did and made promises of changes in the future.
We're going to spend $10 to $15 million over the next 2 to 3 years to enhance our outage management system and also our call center technology.
Legislators from both sides of the political aisle entered these proceedings with many questions.
What happened? What can we do to be better prepared? What ideas do people have? What complaints do people have?
The lack of communication, and I was hoping that the company executives had plans to correct some of those in the near future, and we learn from our mistakes and be better prepared for the next storm.
A recent poll showed that 61% of Connecticut residents approve of the response to the storm, and more than half of those who lost power still gave a thumbs up. You too can weigh in on the storm response. The Connecticut legislature has set up both Facebook and Twitter pages to allow you to voice your frustration or approval. In the post-Irene response, just search for After Irene CT on either social networking site. There will be a public hearing at the Legislative Office Building that will be held on September 26th. I'm George Colley for Fox Connecticut.
Mary Glassman is first selectwoman of Simsbury, but she's also the president of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. Mary, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me, you testified at the hearing, and what was the gist of your testimony, and what answers are you still looking for?
Well, thanks, Lori. I think we found that Hurricane Irene was a good opportunity for us to figure out what we can do better. Here in New England, we know we're going to have more storms, we know we're going to have more disasters, and towns and cities all across Connecticut were affected differently. In Simsbury, we had about 63% of the town without power, but most of it was restored within 24 hours. In some towns like Canterbury and along the coast, they were 100% without power and still didn't know when power was going to be restored. So we're working with CLMP, we're working with the legislators. We appreciate the opportunity to testify at the hearing, to just figure out what went right in the towns that did have a good experience and what we can do to better prepare our residents for the next disaster.
I know that CLMP, the spokesman Mitch Gross told me today that they restored power to 1 million people in 9 days, which was much faster than restoring to 500 or 500,000 people during Gloria. So they're touting that. You know, I mean, obviously this was a massive hit to our electrical system. And one of the main concerns, I guess, among people was the lack of communication, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, Lori. A lot of frustration from mayors and first selectmen, lack of communication, lack of information, so we could protect our residents. For example, we didn't know what parts of our towns were without power. They couldn't tell us that. They couldn't tell us when power was going to be restored.
But why is that? Because they usually, I mean, in a regular winter storm, we know which parts of town.
I don't know. I think there was maybe an overload of things happening, but I think that we're trying to find out is in the areas where things did work well, where towns had a municipal liaison with the utilities, where we had ready access to information, we need to be better better able to plan. If we know power is not going to be restored to a part of our town for a couple of days, then we can start to set up shelters, we can start to bring in meals and do all the things that we do in an emergency disaster. So we need to talk to CLMP about better communications. In some cases, cell phones didn't work, power was out, so there was a difficulty in communicating.
Why do you think that there had to be these hearings, though? Because when you convene a hearing like this, I mean, I think it implies something negative. I mean, you're convening a hearing to get to the bottom of it. And I mean, I don't know that the power companies, I mean, they're in the business of providing power and making money. I'm not necessarily...
I think the hearing was a great opportunity for mayors and first selectmen to share their experiences. It also, I think, will lead to some real changes in how we deal with the next term.
Was it accusatory or not?
No, not at all. I think that if you looked at the town and city survey, about 60% said that they actually were very satisfied with the response of the utilities before leading up to the storm. We had great communication with the governor. The governor convened conference calls with all the CEOs. We had conference calls with CLMP. We had conference calls with some of our congressional delegates. So we felt very prepared for the storm. I think where we need to do some work is coming up with some regional cooperative responses. So towns that were less hit can help towns that are worse hit, deploying our public works crews, getting the information, and better to be able to coordinate with our town crews. Certainly when a power line is down, it's a safety issue, and crews can't go out until the line is cut or shut off. And so what we need to do is to better figure out how we're going to coordinate that information and get more information to the municipal officials more quickly so we can protect our residents.
Have they been able to offer any ideas yet? Because I know that landlines were down and, of course, the Internet was down. So,
well, very interesting. The use of social media actually was one thing that has really come up as an option that we haven't fully utilized. Texting actually lasts longer than cell phones, so we need to do a better job of being able to text to our residents and having them text to us. A lot of our residents in our town were hearing on the website, the blogs, and that's how they were getting their information. We had to rely on, in some cases, the old-fashioned signage because people didn't have power, they didn't have access to phones, so we had to put up signs that says road closed. And we've also identified areas where improvements need to be made physically. The tree trimming is identified as an area. Some towns that did have a less of an impact, they cited as aggressive tree trimming before the storm as one of the reasons why they avoided a lot of the outages at some other towns. So communicating that information to our residents so they allow us to cut trees, so we can keep the lines clear, using social media, making repairs to roads now so we can keep those roads open, social media, cell phones, radio phones. There's a lot of communication improvements that need to be made.
Now, tomorrow, Monday, there's going to be another hearing, and the public is going to be able to get involved. How do you anticipate that that's going to be?
I think you'll hear more of the same. I think you'll hear a lot of frustration, a lot of lack of communication. I know our residents were calling us saying, when will my power be restored? Will it be a day? Will it be a week? We just need to know. And not being able to get that answer, I think, is very frustrating. Having more information allows us to put into place more emergency responses. If we know a town is without power in a section for a week, we know to set up shelters, we know to start preparing meals, we know to go into Plan B. So you'll hear a lot of frustration of folks just not having information.
So we only have about 30 seconds left, but how quickly do you think that you could put a plan together? I know that CLMP is organizing these regional meetings. I mean, time is of the essence. We never know when another storm will be.
We can be ready for the next storm this winter, absolutely. Some of these improvements aren't going to take any more money. They're just going to take a little bit more organizing, introducing the CLMP and municipal liaisons to the towns before the storms occur is one good step in moving forward.
All right, interesting. Thanks so much. Mary Glassman from the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Lori.
Interesting. Coming up, we're going to be talking a little sports. Conferences are being realigned rapidly. We talk about what it might mean for the Huskies.